the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom to our subscribers. It's good to see everybody again. Even though I can't see you, I can see you. I just see you as how many subscribers we have. So we appreciate our subscribers. They're just as important to whoever and how many ever show up here, because they're here. They're really connecting with us and what God is doing here. So we value you, and to those who just come upon us through searching and surfing the YouTube channel, God bless you. We hope you join us more regularly. The Parashah for today is Noach in Bereshit 6:9 to 11:32. And there's a lot going on in this Parashah, would you agree? Way too much to cover everything. So what's nice about the Parashah is that it'll take us, since there's so many different parts, it'll take us 10 years to really cover, if not more, Bereshit, to really kind of put it all together. But by the time next year comes around, I forget what I talked about the year before. But I do keep my transcripts, so maybe I should start organizing them and refer to them and try and, so. But very interesting, this portion basically covers the demise and the wickedness of the human race, of humankind, of man. It illustrates to us how merciful God is and how gracious and long-suffering, because He preserves one man. He could have wiped out all of mankind, could He not? He could have just everything gone, disappeared, blank. Erase the board and start over. Well, this one didn't work, okay? But He didn't do that. That's really interesting. He saw one man that fit into a character that He could work with. And it was a humankind that pleased God. So now just stop and think. The focus is on a humankind, a man, that one of the dominating qualities or characteristics about him is he pleased God. And because he pleased God, God didn't destroy the whole world. He didn't destroy His original creation. He allowed it to carry on. He didn't end it. But I guess the great flood, we could look at it a couple ways. God decided the whole earth needed a huge bath. Really, needed to be washed and cleaned, and when you take your cup and it's dirty, you put water in it, you close the lid, and you shake it up. I'd say he did a full wash of the earth. Really? And in it, we see His character and His love towards us, and the promises and the covenants he makes with Noah and his sons. And we see that God rebuilds humankind. He takes what met the most important characteristics about humankind. I would say the core. The core. Now, if it says that Noah pleases God, can anyone tell me what the connecting quality is that was produced by? What produced Noah pleasing God? Because it says God was pleased with Noah. What is the number one thing that God requires from us that pleases Him?
Righteousness. Righteousness.
Obedience.
Surrender.
What's that?
Surrender.
I'll give you one more.
Believe. Believe.
You're close. You're getting hot.
Faith.
That's it. What's the scripture? Without faith, you cannot please God. And what did Noach do? He pleased God. I would say it requires exercising quite a lot of faith to build a massive boat out of wood and timber that you had to cut down and fit and everything. Why, my goodness, they all thought he was probably crazy. Really. And what does that tell you about faith? Sometimes when we exercise our faith, people think we're crazy. Have you experienced it? We're here just a tiny little shul with a handful of people, and I'm sure some people think I'm crazy. It's like, what are you doing? Well, I'm exercising my faith in my Father, because it's my faith in Him that matters, not how many people are here.
That's right. That's right.
And if He says, this is the house I want you to serve in, and this is what I want you to do, it's no different than Yehovah saying to Noach, I want you to build me a boat. What's the difference? Moshe, I want you to establish a synagogue in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania. I did a lot of services here over the years where it was just me and the heavenly hosts. Now you think I'm crazy. But I'm sorry. There's a thin veil between the physical realm and the spiritual realm. And I don't have to see. I know. Matter of fact, they all came today. They're here. Just with our little brood of believers. They're here. The Father's here. The Son's here. The heavenly hosts are here. And some people probably ask the question, is He all there? Is He all there? I'm all here, okay? It's me. It's me. And so we see in Noach, the Parashah, how God replenishes the earth with humankind. And how quickly humankind degenerates back into a rebellious and stubborn, self-willed, self-seeking being. But I think God already knew that, because that's the byproduct of sin and a fallen creation. We're after our own self-interests. And it's interesting, in order for Noah to please God, he had to be after God's interests, not your interests or my interests. It's after God's interests. I don't know what God's going to do here. I know about 4 weeks ago we had about, I'd say, 30 plus people here for a conference on prophecy, on understanding the Shemitah, the Jubilee, and how it integrates into the prophetic book of Daniel, and the counting of where we're at in God's 7-year plan to restore the world, to restore mankind. I don't have to know. I just need to know a day at a time. And I know today is Shabbat, and that I'm supposed to teach on this Parashah. And that's what I'm doing. What did Yeshua say? Don't worry about tomorrow. There's enough evil today to contend with. And there is. And so, what's interesting is Noach is related to the Hebrew word for rest. It says that his parents named him Noach because they hoped their son would give them rest, nacham, from their toil. Lamech lived 182 years. This is in Bereshit 5, even though the Parashah is in 6, 9 to 11:32. But Lamech lived 182 years and fathered a son whom he called Noah, which means restful. For he said, this one will comfort us in our labor, in the hard work we do with our hands, to get what comes from the ground that Yehovah cursed. And so we see, as we turn to chapter 6, verse 9, it says, here is the history of Noach in his generations. Noach was a man righteous and just. He was righteous. He was also wholehearted. And he walked with God. Now I find that very interesting, because really those three elements, he was righteous. Some translations say he was blameless. some say wholehearted, and he walked with God. For me, that's the total sum of this Parashah. That's really what matters. That we walk righteously before God, we walk blameless, and we walk with God. I mean, we could talk about the water, the size of the boat, how long it floated, when it landed. We could go over all that, but if the real structure, measurements of the heart of Noach was not pointed out, just be a Parashah on history without the people to which it really is what matters. And so what I want to focus on is not all the mechanics of this Parashah, but on what does it mean to be righteous? Noach was a righteous man. Well, the word for righteous is Tsaddiq. And there have been many Tsaddiqs recognized down through Jewish history. Men who were righteous. They were just. They were lawful. They were good men. And so we need to understand that what are the characteristics of a Tsaddiq? A Tsaddiq is moral. He's committed. He's committed to that which is true, good, just, and right. He's humble. The way you recognize a Tsaddiq is when he's set against a rasha, or an evil person, an evildoer. That's why it says Noah was a righteous man in his generation. Do you see that, the contrast? He stood out. Do we stand out in our generation? Because as we see, and as we read, this was a corrupt, violent generation. Do we have some similar characteristics going on in our world today? Well, there you go. Now, you see, we are in the midst of a polarization in our culture, which has reduced itself down to two basic elements. good and evil. And evil is not ashamed to express and manifest its evil. What more do we need to recognize the contrast? Could we say, just throwing this out there, was Charlie Kirk a Tsaddiq? Because he was fighting evil. He was challenging evil. It says, when good men do nothing, evil prevails. But we know that even our founding fathers stood up against tyranny and evil. And if you know some of the history about our founding fathers, most of them were very accomplished men. Their lives ended where they were broke. They were poor. They were wealthy men, but because of their efforts, they pretty much lost everything. Now, we don't see the end of their time. We only see the high points where they're engaged in the colonies and in fighting the fight. But the eventual outcome ended up with them losing everything. It's quite a challenge. Are you willing to lay it all on the line? Or do you have the things you cherish? We've got to examine ourselves. We've got to ask ourselves the question, what is it? Because Noach had to lay it all on the line, didn't he? We don't know what the commerce and economy and the structure of how society functioned in terms of the way we view society today. Is very different. But the same elements exist. There were the efforts to survive and to toil in order to acquire your provisions. And we all know that we get on a treadmill in order to accomplish and fulfill the needs that we have. And it's very disruptive to our focusing on the Lord or focusing on what God's called us to do. We get so distracted. Now, Noach built the ark. I'm sure he had his challenges, just like us. He might have been doing something else, and God interrupted him and basically said, Noach, I want you to do this. He had to change direction. Noach had to change his direction in order to please God. That means divesting yourself of your desires and your hopes and dreams and embracing the Father's plan, the Father's desires, the Father's hopes and plans for humankind. Do you want to be a part of that? I mean, what is God driving towards? restoring the world, tikkun olam. So, within the scope of your own world, your own sphere of influence, what are you doing to restore, to heal, to reconcile, to restore it back to the way God intended it to be? And understand, sometimes you can't. But God's interested in, are you making the effort? Did you make the effort? Did you take the steps? That's a Tsaddiq, a man righteous, just, and lawful. According to what? According to the local ordinances and statutes? No. According to God's ways. According to His Torah and His mitzvot and His boundaries. Mitzvot are nothing more than just the boundaries that Jehovah has laid out and constructed and said, this is how, these are the boundaries on how I want you to relate to me. And these are the boundaries on how I want you to relate to your neighbor. And the correlation is how you relate the boundaries that I've set between you and your neighbor shows me how much you love me. That's the test. That's the test. And Noach was concerned. I mean, really think about this. I just remember as a little boy being taught the scriptures. I'll never forget this. Noah preached to everybody. There's a flood coming. Get ready. And they made fools of him for building this huge vessel. What did they say? In the end of days, what will be the mindset and the attitude of men? There's peace everywhere. Peace. There's peace. What are you talking about? The world's coming to an end. When everybody says peace, 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 destruction will come in a moment, in the blink of an eye. How fragile is the peace that's being constructed? Because the divisions run deep and wide between the principles and the individuals and the nations that are at odds with one another. There's only one peacemaker that can bring peace, and that's Yeshua. Peace to you, and peace to the nations. And so we see that there's a contrast between the Tsaddiq, the righteous man, and the wicked, the rasha. I gotta check where my notes are going here. I seem to be missing something, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay. And so, the word for blameless or he was righteous in God's eyes, or blameless, is the word tamim, which describes that which is whole, sound, complete, physically, morally, ritually, and in the theology of his life. Uniting them under the idea of undivided wholeness, blameless, for persons without blemish, for offerings imperfect, for the ways and works of God. Let me say that again. It says that he was blameless. Okay? That word relates, another word for blameless is wholehearted. Believe it or not. That's tamim. He was blameless. Tamim translates to wholehearted, complete, perfect, or blameless. And it's often used in a spiritual context to describe someone, hear me on this is really important, describe someone who is sincere and undivided in their commitment to Yehovah. Yehovah. The word signifies completeness or integrity rather than flawless perfection. You know the word in the Gospels, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, does not mean flawless. It means whole, complete, filled with integrity. And so, what's being described here is that in the religious context, tamim describes being wholehearted and sincerely committed to God, as in Deuteronomy 18:13, where God says to the Israelites, you must be wholehearted with Yehovah your God. Well, what does that mean to be wholehearted with your God? It means you're committed. You're sincere. You're loyal. You're without blame. You're focused on doing what God's called you to do. Noach did what God called him to do, despite we don't really know what he was doing as far as his efforts to survive and live and provide, but we know that God called him out to take on a huge project and responsibility that took years and years to accomplish. God only knows what he's doing here and how many years it's going to take to put brick by brick, stone upon stone, to build what he's called into being here. Are you with me? It's God's time. It's his project. I'm just a caretaker. I'm just here to, okay, come on in. Okay, I need you to do this. We got to break the tables down and put them away. That's wholeheartedness. The fact that you came and you felt an obligation to see that the house, not my house, to see the house tidied up. For who? Not for me, but for him. And then for you. So that when you and anybody else came, there was water. There was cleanliness. There was an environment that could influence you to come closer to Yehovah. Think about it. We were here yesterday for Him. Not to just go through the motions of break this down, roll this up, throw this out, carry this there. No. We were building the ark. We were doing maintenance on the ark. His ark. That's really where the focus should be in the community. And isn't it interesting, Jose, what's our prayer? Who are we asking God to send us? People that are what? Wholehearted. Circumcised hearts. That, not for me, but they have a deep desire to please God. Not me, not Jose or anybody else, but the deep desire to please God. So they're gonna inject themselves into this house and trust God for what God is doing here. That's faith. And trust God, even though you don't know the plan. The only thing up on our website that conveys what our mission is, if you've gone there and checked it out, is to create a family environment where people are here for one another. We've had people come and go. I don't know, I guess they weren't moved to be here for one another. They had to go somewhere else. And I don't condemn them for that. Maybe they were supposed to move on and go somewhere else. Maybe the character and nature of who they are is better, able to function in another pen. So, are you getting a picture of wholeheartedness? Because Noah epitomizes it. It's an example for how we should be. There's another correlation here. And I go back to my whole comment of a Greek mindset and a Middle Eastern mindset. A Greek mindset wants to check off, I did this, I did this, I did this. Okay, I'm complete, I'm whole. But in the Torah and in the culture in the Middle East, things are illustrated by concrete connections and references. And I said this before, and I'll just say it again because it's the easiest example. This is a tzitzit. The word tzitzit in Hebrew means blossom. And that blossom is pointing to, at some day, producing fruit that can be eaten. And we wear tzitzit in order to remind us that we're bearing fruit. We are carrying a life with us on the fringes of our garments to remind us that we are out and around in the community and interacting with people with the ultimate goal and desire to live a life of an example that will one day bear fruit in the lives of the people that we interact with. Same thing. Noah was doing something concrete that would illustrate his loyalty, his commitment, his devotion to what God was doing, not what he wanted to do. It really takes a person an ability or a desire to look inside themselves and discern, is this my desire? Or is this your desire, Lord? Am I going about my day-to-day activities, fulfilling my desires? Or doing the things that I have to do in order to be responsible and take care of things? But beyond that, outside of the scope of the things that are needed to do, am I going here and going there because it's my desire? Big difference. But what I want to point out is God, even this whole concept of blamelessness, a Tsaddiq, righteous, just, no different than the sacrifices that were offered up in the wilderness, in the tabernacle. Do you know that? Why do I say that? How could the very same thing that Noach is doing and God is declaring him to be correlate with the animals and the sacrifices in the tabernacle? Well, what was the whole point? Okay, the term tamim, meaning wholehearted, perfect, complete, blameless, is no different than the term also being used for something that is physically unblemished or complete, such as animal offered as a sacrifice. The sacrifices, the animals, had to be without blemish, perfect. I exhort you, therefore, brothers, in view of God's mercies, to offer yourselves as a sacrifice, living and set apart for God. This will please Him. Wow! Where did we hear that before? Noach pleased God. Noach was a living sacrifice set apart for Jehovah to build the ark that would show the mercy and grace of God on humankind to perpetuate humankind's existence and life, to rebuild and to restore it. That's what God's committed to. Guess what? We're all Noachs. When you think about it, offer yourselves as a sacrifice, living and set apart for God. This will please Him. It is the logical temple worship for you. In other words, do not let yourselves be conformed to the standards of the olam hazeh, meaning this world. Don't live according to the routines of this world. Prune it down. Cut it back. You know, we're always trying to get that brass ring. We're always trying to save for this and save for that. I think we've lost sight of what really matters. We spend more time running around doing the things to please us than we do to please God. Now, I go about my day, each day, I say, Lord, I commit my ways unto you. Please direct my steps. May I fulfill today what you've written in your book concerning every day of my life. I had quite a day the other day. I had somewhat of an idea of what I had to do and where I had to go. But God just kind of says, you see, when God says, commit your ways unto me, and I'll direct your steps, it's like this. I mean, it's good to use the mental logical order that we possess, the logic to plan out a very efficient, reasonable, agenda of what we got to do today. But I find all the time, I ask the Lord to direct my steps, and when I step, He goes like this. And I thought I was going, no, you're going this way. You know what I mean? Happens every day. And that's okay. You're not out of sync with God because you were going that way and He had to take your leg and kind of direct you. Because all He's doing is testing you to see if you're bent towards following His way, His timing, His direction. I had to, my mechanic told me to get some fuel cleaner to put in my gas. So I had to go to the AutoZone. And I ended up getting this one gentleman that I realized I better check my oil. Well, the car I have, these new cars, it's not a new car, but the mechanical parts of them just are not as simple as they were, 40 years ago when I was, more than 40 years ago, in the 70s, I was driving a Rambler. My dipstick, I could pull it out, and it was real simple to understand where my oil was. Well, the car I have, the dipstick, I still haven't figured out how to identify where it's at. It's so molded and I can't even describe it. So I said to this gentleman, can you help me? And he came out and he checked it. Because I checked it, I said to myself, I better get somebody else to check it and get a second opinion. Because if I don't have any oil or it's too low, I don't want to be driving all the way down, 50 miles from here, blow the engine up. So he came out and he checked it. and it needed oil. And so I put the oil in. But to make a long story short, this man ended up sharing his heart about where he's at with God. His house burned down. He's in his 70s. He's got tattoos all over his body. And he didn't live the best kind of life. But he testified to me how in the midst of his house burning down, I guess he collected things. And one coffee cup didn't get damaged. And on that coffee cup, it says, "Go with God." And he just so beautifully shared his thanks for God's seeing him through. And there's more to it, but I won't. I invited him here today. Maybe he'll come one of these times. I know where he's at if I want to go just say hi to him, as long as he's still working there, you know. And then I had another experience where I went to the bank and I was in line, and the teller, there was a gentleman at the teller, and we ended up getting into a conversation about the politics of the day and all these, what's going on with the illegal immigrants and the ICE and everything, and just how wrong it is that they're rioting against the law to keep safety and order in our streets, and they're the ones that are disrupting it to keep the people that have broken our laws here. So he was just a regular guy, and so I left the bank, and that was that. I had to go to Wawa to get something. I'm sitting there in my car. Who walks up? But this guy. And I already met him once, so I engaged him in a conversation, and I invited him. But he said, I'll come once I get over, I'm getting checked, I might have cancer, or he had cancer, or something along those lines. And I'm sitting there, right out in public, and the Spirit of the Lord says to me, pray for this man. Speak to the cancer and restore it. His cells, restore his cells back to the way I created them. And it was on his neck, so I reached out of the car and said, come here. And I took my hand and I put it around his neck. I mean, he could have thought I was going to choke him or something. But I just put my hand around his neck and I prayed, spoke healing into his life. I may never see him again. I may never hear from him again. But maybe one day he'll show up here. We don't know. But this is what I'm talking about. Are we aware of what God is doing? Or are we just going about our routine of doing what we want to do, satisfying ourselves? Do we have time for God to break into our routine and say, build me an ark, because it's going to save creation, mankind? Do this because it's going to change a person's life. And I find that it's not in the big tent meetings or, special. It's on the highways and the byways. It's in my daily routine of the mundane things of life that God places a need in front of me. That's when we're to respond. Not a meeting that, oh, everybody come and, we're going to pray for you. No, they needed prayer right then. They needed encouragement right then.
Timing.
And so, what I'm trying to convey is that Noah was a Tsaddiq, a righteous man, just. He was wholehearted. He was clean. He was whole and complete and available and able to be offered up as a sacrifice, as what we are to be, living sacrifices set apart for God to do His work, to do His bidding, coming here every Shabbat is being set apart. Do you realize that? God set us apart and invited us to participate in His Shabbat, His day of rest. Coming here is part of our sacrifice. We are the living sacrifice here today to offer ourselves up to Jehovah in honoring His day of rest, His set-apart day. When we enter into His set-apart day, we become set apart with that day. Instead of running around and working or taking care of our stuff, take care of God's stuff. Are you with me? And that really translates into the thing that really matters, which characterizes what Noah was doing. It says, now you remember Enoch, right? It says he said he walked with God and he was not. Isn't that interesting? To walk, the Hebrew is Halacha, literally means the path that one walks or to walk, and is the collective body of Jewish law, customs, and practices. It derives from the Hebrew root Hey, Lamed, Kef, I guess. I may be off on that. I'm not a scholar, but Hey, Lamed, and Kaf, I think. But it means to go or to walk, emphasizing the idea of following a path of guidance through life. Halacha is the blueprint for religious Jewish life, providing a roadmap for actions both great and small. At the auto parts store, small. Outside the Wawa, small. Speaking in Scranton, a little bigger. Okay. Charlie Kirk did the same thing. He went on campuses. He spoke to groups. He inspired people. He encouraged them. He allowed them to pour their hearts out. He welcomed dialogue. We should do the same. People are pent up. They want to express themselves. Everybody wants to be heard. And so wherever we go, we need to be good listeners. The only way people can be heard is if there's good listeners out there. And that's one of the legacies. Charlie Kirk, he listened. He listened to the hearts of people. And he gave them an opportunity to release all that was pent up inside, that was keeping them from making and going in the right direction. Yeshua was the same way. See, now I'm crying. So, I'd say, at least for me, what Yehovah put on my heart for this Parashah, not about the boat, it's not about the animals, not about the water, and where it landed, and where the boat landed, and what they all did. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge and teaching and all those other things. But they mean nothing without the core of who Noach is. And that is, he was a Tsaddiq, he was a righteous man, blameless, tamim. Okay? And he walked with God. That's our example. So I just want to encourage you, and I have much more, but I think you all get the point. It's pretty clear. So praise God, bless you. Bless you. I hope that this message has reached into your heart and clarified some direction, some order of what your day-to-day life should look like, as in Noah's life. That's all. Bless you. Bless you who are listening. I say, may the God of Shalom, which passes all understanding, guard your heart, your mind, your emotions, and all that you are in Messiah Yeshua. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yehovah lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. Shabbat shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe from Beit Torah in Schnecksville, PA. If you're moved, come and visit us. Okay? We welcome you. So, bless you. Shalom.
My servant, hear thou, O Israel. It was